Some people don't hurt you loudly. They hurt you quietly. They don't attack you. They drain you. And most of the time, they don't even realize they're doing it. But your peace feels it. Your confidence feels it. Today, we're talking about the subtle requests that reveal unsafe people. Because the things someone asks from you often say more than the things they give. When someone repeatedly asks you to explain yourself, it often feels subtle at first. It doesn't sound like criticism. It sounds like curiosity. But over time, you notice the pattern. You're not being asked to share. You're being asked to justify. Every decision becomes a debate. Every feeling requires evidence, and every boundary needs approval. Slowly, you begin to question yourself, not because you're wrong, but because constant explanation trains you to doubt your own clarity. Healthy communication seeks understanding, not permission. When someone truly wants to understand you, they listen without challenging your right to feel what you feel. But unsafe people turn conversations into interrogations. They ask why, not to learn, but to weaken your confidence. The more you explain, the more power they take, because now your peace depends on their agreement. That's a dangerous place to live emotionally. You are allowed to feel without presenting a case. Your emotions do not need to be logical to be valid. When someone demands constant reasoning, they are telling you that your inner experience only matters if it makes sense to them. That slowly disconnects you from your instincts. You stop trusting your gut and start outsourcing your self-worth to someone else's opinion. Over time, this dynamic creates emotional exhaustion. You rehearse conversations before they happen. You overthink your words. You soften your truth to avoid conflict. What started as simple communication turns into self-abandonment. You're no longer asking, "Is this right for me?" You're asking, "Will this be accepted?" And that shift costs you your authenticity. Strong relationships don't require constant defense. They are built on respect, not persuasion. When someone respects you, they don't need you to prove your pain, your boundaries, or your choices. They trust that if something matters to you, it matters. That trust creates safety, and safety is where honesty lives without fear of being challenged. If you find yourself constantly explaining who you are, consider stepping back instead of speaking louder. Silence can be a boundary. Distance can be clarity. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth. The right people won't demand explanations. They'll offer understanding. And protecting your peace sometimes means choosing not to explain at all. When someone asks you to sacrifice your boundaries for their comfort, it rarely comes as a direct demand. It usually arrives disguised as disappointment, guilt, or emotional pressure. They may say you're being difficult, cold, or selfish, but what they're really saying is that your limits interfere with their access. Boundaries make unsafe people uncomfortable because boundaries remove control, and anyone who benefits from your lack of limits will resist when you begin to set them. Your boundaries are not walls meant to punish others. They are markers of self-respect. They communicate what you can give without harming yourself. When someone reacts negatively to your boundaries, it's often because they were relying on you to overextend, to stay silent, or to put their needs above your own. That reaction is not evidence that your boundary is wrong. It's evidence that it was necessary. Over time, giving up your boundaries creates resentment. You say yes when you mean no. You tolerate behavior that drains you. You minimize your discomfort to keep the peace. But peace built on self-betrayal never lasts. It slowly turns into frustration, emotional fatigue, and a quiet sense that you're losing yourself. Boundaries exist to prevent this slow erosion of who you are. Respectful people don't argue with your limits. They may feel disappointed, but they adjust. They don't pressure you to explain, negotiate, or compromise your well-being. They understand that a boundary is not a rejection of them, but an acceptance of yourself. Anyone who truly values you will want you healthy, whole, and grounded, not depleted and compliant. When someone insists that love requires constant sacrifice, be cautious. Love does involve compromise, but it never demands self-erasure. You are not required to abandon your needs to prove loyalty. The moment someone frames your boundary as a threat to the relationship, they are revealing that the relationship depends on you being smaller than you deserve to be. Choosing your boundaries will sometimes mean choosing discomfort in others. That is not cruelty, it is clarity. You are allowed to protect your energy, your time, and your emotional space. The people meant to stay in your life will respect your limits without resentment. And the ones who don't are teaching you exactly why those boundaries matter. When someone asks for constant access to your time without respecting it, the imbalance doesn't show up all at once. It begins with small expectations. Quick replies, last-minute plans, or the assumption that you're always available. At first, it feels like being needed, but over time, you realize your schedule is no longer yours. Your time becomes something others feel entitled to, not something they appreciate. Time is not just hours on a clock, it's energy, focus, and presence. When someone disregards your time, they are also disregarding your priorities, your rest, and your life outside of them. They may interrupt you, show up late, cancel without care, or demand immediate attention while offering none in return. This behavior sends a quiet message. Your time matters less than theirs. Constant availability slowly trains you to abandon yourself. You start responding out of obligation rather than choice. You rearrange your day to accommodate others, even when it costs you peace or productivity. Eventually, you stop asking what you need because you're too busy meeting everyone else's expectations. What feels like generosity becomes depletion. Respectful people understand that access is earned, not assumed. They check before taking. They value your time because they value you. When someone truly respects you, they don't guilt you for being unavailable or punish you with silence when you set limits. They recognize that boundaries around time are essential for healthy connection, not obstacles to it. A lack of time respect often reveals deeper issues. It can reflect poor emotional regulation, insecurity, or a need for control. Instead of managing their own discomfort, they rely on your availability to soothe them. That's not connection, it's dependency, and dependency disguised as closeness will eventually exhaust you. You are allowed to protect your time without apology. Saying no is not rejection, it's self-respect. The people meant to be in your life will adjust, not pressure you. They won't measure your care by how fast you reply or how much you give. They'll honor your time because they understand that when you choose to show up, it's genuine and not forced. When someone asks you to carry emotional weight they refuse to carry themselves, the burden often builds quietly. At first, you listen, you support, you show empathy, but over time, you notice that the exchange is one-sided. They unload their stress, their frustration, their chaos, and then walk away lighter, while you're left holding what they refuse to process. What feels like compassion slowly turns into emotional labor that was never meant to be yours alone. This dynamic often forms when one person avoids responsibility for their inner world. Instead of reflecting, growing, or seeking solutions, they hand their emotions to you. You become the regulator of their moods, the fixer of their problems, the container for feelings they don't want to face. And the more capable you are, the more they rely on you, not because they value you, but because you make their life easier. Carrying someone else's emotional weight without reciprocity creates imbalance. You start monitoring their emotions before expressing your own. You choose your words carefully to avoid triggering them. You suppress your needs because there's no room for them. Eventually, your emotional space shrinks while theirs expands. That's not support. That's emotional displacement. Healthy support involves mutual responsibility. You can care without carrying. You can listen without absorbing. When someone respects you, they don't expect you to solve what they won't confront. They take ownership of their healing and allow you to be a companion, not a caretaker. Anyone who depends on you to manage their emotions is asking you to do work they should be doing themselves. Over time, this pattern leads to burnout. You feel drained after interactions. You sense pressure instead of connection. And yet you hesitate to step back because you've been conditioned to believe that leaving would be abandonment. But protecting your emotional health is not abandonment. It's honesty. You are not responsible for emotions you didn't create. You are allowed to put the weight down. You are allowed to say, "This is not mine to carry." The people who truly care about you will respect that shift and grow with it. Those who resist are revealing that the relationship depended on your emotional labor. And any connection that requires you to break under its weight is not one you are meant to hold. When someone asks you to shrink so they can feel bigger, the request is rarely spoken out loud. It shows up in subtle ways: dismissive comments, lack of support, quiet resentment when you succeed, or jokes that minimize your confidence. At first, you might ignore it, telling yourself you're being sensitive. But over time, you notice a pattern. Your growth creates discomfort, and instead of celebrating you, they try to contain you. This dynamic often comes from insecurity. Rather than facing their own limitations, they manage their discomfort by reducing your visibility. They may discourage your ambitions, question your decisions, or shift the conversation back to themselves whenever you shine. You learn slowly that being fully yourself creates tension, so you dim your light to keep the connection intact. Shrinking yourself has a cost. You begin editing your words, hiding your achievements, and downplaying your strengths. You trade authenticity for acceptance. And the more you minimize yourself, the more permission others feel to overlook you. What once felt like compromise becomes self-erasure, and the relationship starts to feel smaller than the person you're becoming. Healthy relationships expand you. They make room for your confidence, your voice, and your success. When someone truly supports you, your growth doesn't threaten them. It inspires them. They don't compete with your progress or make you feel guilty for evolving. They understand that your becoming does not take away from them. When someone needs you to stay small, it's often because your growth challenges the story they tell themselves. Instead of rising with you, they pull you back to a version of you that feels manageable. That's not love, loyalty, or friendship. It's fear disguised as connection. And fear will always try to control what it cannot match. You are not meant to be reduced for someone else's comfort. You don't owe anyone less of yourself to keep them close. The people meant to walk with you